In this video, I'm going to show you why the feelings that you experience during grief are very similar to those that you experience during a redundancy. Welcome to the channel. My name is Jane Foray, career coach for frustrated professionals who are ready to take the next step up in their career. If you've just arrived here, then don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you're an HR professional and you are about to embark on a redundancy consultation process, there are behaviours that you should expect to see from those people who are impacted by the redundancy. So these behaviours are a perfectly normal response to what is happening. And the thing to remember is when people experience redundancy, what they're experiencing is loss. And the obvious losses are things like loss of their job and the loss of their income that are associated with that job. But what people are also experiencing is their loss of status. That could be within their own peer groups, within their professional groups, or even within their own family. Another important loss is the loss of connection with others. So if you think about it, most of us spend the majority of our days at work, and this is where most of our social interactions happen. When this disappears, what we lose is the connection with people. We've already seen the impact of being isolated from our friends and family during the COVID lockdowns. So imagine that again for those who are going through redundancy. What you also lose is routine. So if you think about your daily life is governed by routine. We generally get up at the same time, have the same thing for breakfast, drive to the same place, sit in the same seat, talk to the same people. Whilst some people might think that that is quite dull, what routine actually provides us with is stability. So when you lose your job, you don't just lose your job and your income, you lose everything else that is attached to this. And grief is attached to this loss. So as a line manager or an HR professional, when you start to have these redundancy conversations, there's a lot of things going on for the individual that you need to be mindful of. So I've broken these things down into a 5-stage acronym called DERAC. So that's D-E-R-A-C. I'll put it on the screen for you right here. So let's start at D. So what will happen is your people will start at D and they will work their way through to C. The speed at which they move through this cycle can be determined by the conversations that you are having with them and how they're treated throughout the process. So if you've experienced some grief or some loss in your life, then this might resonate with you. So let's walk through the acronym and I'll illustrate the points using examples from my own experience, both as an HR professional who's led a number of redundancy consultations and as someone who has experienced redundancy twice in 1 year. So let's start with D, denial. For my second redundancy, I was working with Leon Restaurants, which is a really fun and upbeat kind of organisation. On one particular day, I was working from home and I was about to sign off for the day when I received an email with a formal invitation to a meeting to, quote unquote, discuss my future employment. Now, I've worked in HR for a long time and I know that when you receive a letter that says, discuss your future employment, this means one thing and one thing only. It means it's unlikely that there is going to be some future employment. So my response was, are you freaking kidding me? I've only been here for 8 months. I actually sent the email off to a lawyer friend and I just said, is this what I think it is? And the thing for that is that totally came out of the blue for me. So my first experience of redundancy that year, there was so much talk about the change in the organisation that I'd almost switched off from the possibility of what might happen. I was just carrying on, doing my thing, and then I finally got the news that my role was at risk of redundancy because my role no longer existed. The question I was asking was, how on earth are we going to be able to do all this work that we have on the plan? So 2 very different responses. One happened kind of out of the blue and the other one had been going on for so long that I couldn't quite believe that it was actually happening. when I've been involved in change programs as HR, some of our colleagues were always surprised by the depth of the proposed changes, and this can come as a shock, which resulted in denial. So some of the things that I heard in presentations was, I didn't realise it was that bad. It's a natural thing. So that's the first thing. It's the D for denial. It's the denial that something is happening. So the second stage then is emotion. This is the next thing to kick in. And this could be a whole different range of emotions, ranging from anger to happiness. So, some people might be counting down the days until they retire, and they're actually pleased that they might have an easy ticket out the business with some cash in their pocket. Disbelief is another emotion that you might see, so particularly in my second example, that was disbelief was my emotion. I'd chosen that job. I'd had 3 offers on the table, and I believed everything that you had told me about this organisation, and to get me to accept this offer over everybody else's. When I was at British Airways, I was angry when I found out that my role of talent was at risk of redundancy. I'd been told that talent was an integral part of the people strategy. So why in the hell are you getting rid of the talent role if it's that important to the future of the organisation? Very often this is an auto response. So again, expect it to happen. And all you can do as a line manager is be available to listen and understand where someone is coming from and why you're seeing that emotion from them. You will see emotion. Some people might stay in this stage longer than others who may speed through it and on to the next one. But just remember that you will see emotion, and it's not aimed at you as a line manager, it's a response to the situation. So let's move on to the third thing then, rationalisation. So what's happening at this stage is people are starting to understand the reason for the change, and they're starting to rationalise this in their minds. So in my second example, I sat down and I had the conversation with my manager about why it was happening. I didn't necessarily agree with it 100%, but I started to rationalise the decision. So what was happening is there was venture capitalist investment in the business. They were looking at costs, and head office costs, training costs are always the first thing to go in whenever there's cost cutting that needs to happen. So I got to this point quite quickly. I was pissed off. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. It was 2 weeks before Christmas. But you know what? I got it. And what I realised very quickly was that the decision had been made. I wasn't going to change the decision at all. What people are also at this stage are starting to think about is some of the possibilities that the situation presents. So what they'll be thinking about is, what does this mean to me? They'll be thinking about what they're losing. And also one of the things that you can help them to think about as a line manager is, what's the door that is opening for me? So if this door is closing, what's the one that's going to open right now? So some of the phrases that I heard when I was managing redundancies were, this is the kick up the backside that I needed. I was getting too comfortable here. I wasn't learning, I wasn't growing, or this will give me the push that I need to get a higher paid job or do that thing that I always wanted to do. We also had one guy in one particular scenario who decided that he was going to live in Thailand, and he came into the office to hand in all his stuff with a one-way ticket in his hand and his suitcase packed. So there are positives to this. But again, you need to give people time to start thinking about what those possibilities are that this situation is going to present to you. And then again, as a line manager, all you can do is be available to them to speak should they need to have a conversation. So the fourth part is acceptance. So once your people are through the rationalization stage, then they move on to the acceptance stage. So sometimes people know that what's going on is, a fait accompli, the decision has been made, and they may get here quickly, which is the experience that I described when I was at Lyon. But what you have to remember is you have to go through the D, the denial, the E, the emotion, and the R, rationalization stages before you can get to this point. And remember, people will stay at some stages longer than other people will. And some people may even go back a stage. But what you need to remember is if you go from maybe rationalization back to emotion, they still need to come back to rationalization before they can move on to acceptance. So the fifth and final stage then is C, it's change. So you or your people will never get to this stage unless you've gone through all the other stages first. So again, some people will go through them quickly, some may get stuck at one point and need some additional support to help them to move through that stage. Others may go back a stage. Whatever the situation is, you as a leader need to support your people through it. So I hope that you found that useful. Remember that redundancy is a loss. It's not just the loss of a job and the salary associated with it. It's, people also experience those intangible losses such as their loss of status, loss of routine, loss of purpose. If you would like to download my free guide to helping your people transition through this change, then click on the link that I have left in the comments below. If you would like some support for your people, if you'd like to provide them with some one-to-one support to help them through this, then please do get in touch. Details of my website and my programs are listed in the description box below. So if you found this useful, then please do click on that like button, share this with anyone you feel will get some value from it, and please do subscribe for future episodes. My name is Jane Foray, career coach for frustrated professionals. I'll see you on the next video.